Hello, Scrolls fans. Welcome to Heart of Scrolls. My name is Smogan. I'm really excited to have you all join us because, of course, this is the first podcast after the debut of Waypoints, and we are all very, very excited here on the show to talk about it and especially talk about what's been going on the ladder in the last few days. Now, we have so much to talk about that I'm just going to go ahead and jump right to it with our introductions of our wonderful guests. Normally here on Heart of Scrolls, we tend to have a lot of Badgers on the show, but this time we have a little bit of a more diverse crowd. So I'm very happy to announce that each of these guys are making their first debut. I guess you can only have a debut that's your first debut, right? But anyway, they're all making their debut on Heart of Scrolls here. So I'm going to start off with Lahopaa. Lahopaa, welcome to Heart of Scrolls. Glad to have you on.
Hey.
Lahopaa, will you talk a little bit about maybe a deck or two that you've been playing on the ladder in the last few days?
Yeah, I basically started out with Gravelocks as soon as the patch came out, and I managed to get an insane win streak with it, but then it got a little bit boring, and right now I'm trying to play late game order, but it's not actual playing yet, it's more trying.
Oh, what's making it difficult?
I was never very good at that deck, so I decided I should finally learn it. And there's also some new scrolls like the Arbalast here that are great.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a lot of fun to play around with.
Yeah.
All right, and our next guest here today is, of course, Atmaz. Atmaz is one of the more prolific streamers of Scrolls, and I'm very happy to have you on the show, Atmaz.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
And can you tell us a little bit about a deck that you have been playing since Waypoints hit?
Yeah, so, I mean, I've gone through a couple decks. I'm kind of just feeling around, seeing how things work and everything. I've played just about everything. I did a lot of Order to begin with, like Knight Order. That's pretty fun. I love Effigy of the Queen. It's probably my favorite card. People want to nerf it. I understand. And I've done Gravelocks, of course. Gravelocks are kind of fun to play. But I think my favorite deck that I've played, I think it's a little weak, but I think someone would argue, but I think Undead Decay is really fun to play, and I love being able to run Decay without Darklings and be able to do crazy snipes with Restless Dead and the thing that makes you a husk or makes you undead. God, I'm the worst with scroll names, but what's the name of that card?
The one cost enchantment that they just changed. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, you just cast that and Restless one. I love that. Anyway, yeah, that's what I've been playing.
Well, cool. Have you had any success with the Undead Decay deck? I haven't. I've watched quite a few games in the last few days and haven't seen it.
You know, I'm not that high on the ladder because I've only done a couple games per day. I'm like, I don't know, 15 something. But I have actually won a high percentage with that deck. I'm not playing against the top players right now. But there's definitely times where yesterday there was a game where there was 2 10 health idols and an 8 health idol, and like on the opponent's side, I did 2 damage the whole game, and they were like winning. And then I won the game in one turn with 2 Harvesters out and Restless Undead, and I did that thing where you turn an Ilmire Rot Eater into an undead and haste that as well.
Bones. Oh, nice.
Restless Bones, nice. Restless Bones. Like I said, I'm the worst at scroll names. Always have been, but I know what they do. I just can't think of the name.
And the one cost enchantment is named Shroud of Unlife.
Shroud of Unlife. Thank you. Yeah, but yeah, it's a fun.
Well, cool. That sounds like a top 5 play for NRP if you had a recording for it. But
I probably should have. And also, not to mention Irva, who's freaking amazing.
One of my favorite scroll designs is Irva. I just think that's just a really cool card. But this is probably a good time to introduce Zarc. Zarc is our new Scrolls name guru. He has no choice but to be that now. Thanks for coming on the show, Zarc.
Hi. This is actually my 3rd time being on Heart of Scrolls. You weren't there for the previous 2.
Oh, well, no kidding. Well, see, I stand corrected. Welcome back to the show, Zarc.
It's always a pleasure to be here. It's always a good time to show off my ugly mug to a bunch of people who will probably be better off never having seen it.
They'll live somehow. And can you talk a little bit about some decks you've been playing on the ladder?
Well, I have been a big proprietor of a deck of a scroll known as Totem Mass that everyone insists is horrible, yet I can't understand why they would think so.
Myself included, by the way.
Well, screw you. I've basically been playing a deck I've been calling Totem Mask Growth, and I'm the only guy ever playing it because I think no one in their right mind would run Junkyard and Druid Burial Ground and stuff like that in an aggro deck. But basically, the gist of the deck is you kind of play like almost aggro growth up until a point, and then you drop Totem Mask along with some structures to make a huge Kinfolk Brave or Great Wolf, and then you just snowball out of control from there. If I can get the Totem Mask ball rolling, it's not unlikely for me to have a 12-12 or a 14-14 Brave or like a 17 attack Great Wolf. I had that once, that was pretty funny. And because the general spammy nature you can do with growth, it makes it possible to like retain an impressive board state even if you don't have that many creature scrolls and spells, and you have some amazing draw power that in Fertile Soil and Sister of the Fox. It's been doing reasonably well. I'm still figuring out the deck. Currently ranked like 59 with it.
The only thing that would make it better is if you started calling it structure growth.
Well, well, it's not exactly structure growth. It's like aggro growth where I'll like combo into a bunch of structures if I need to. So like I'll drop Nork's Nest for extra aggro and Druid Burial Ground after a Quaker or Frost Gale and Junkyard when I want to chump luck with Rat King.
Basically playing the role of the useless contraption in a traditional MES build.
Yeah, I mean, Junkyard's an interesting card sometimes. I mean, it's been saving my ass sometimes when I like dropped it along with a Rat King against a bunch of 2 attack units.
Yeah.
And people always go, "What?" when I play the Junkyard. They cannot understand it.
Mind games.
Would you be willing to throw a link to that deck in chat?
A link to the deck as in a JSON string or as in an actual picture? I can do an actual picture.
The picture would be fine, yeah. Just to give them an idea of what you're talking about.
I'll post it in chat.
Appreciate it. All right, so going forward for the rest of the show, we are of course going to focus on waypoints. We have sort of 3 goals that we want to hit in our limited time today. We're going to first talk about waypoints more at the deck level, talking about the decks that we've seen most frequently, the archetypes we've seen, what we feel maybe is a little too strong, what we feel might be a sleeper that hasn't come up yet but maybe will in the future. And then we'll start talking in the second part of the show about more individual cards that we're excited to talk about, like Gravelock Freak or Knight Sergeant or Samada Shift and things like that. And then finally at the end, we're going to try to touch on the patch that was released just a few hours ago. So we are nothing if not topical. Including the change to Brain Lice and Snargle Omelette. So without further ado, I'm going to open things up for discussion about Waypoints decks and just kind of ask a general question to you guys. What have you seen the most in the last few days?
I guess I'll start. I think it's pretty. Yeah, I think it's pretty diverse. I've seen multiple types of decks for every color, and I think everyone is exploring, and it's great. I don't think anything's dominating, and I think like it's like the perfect time to be laddering because every game is different.
Yeah, same.
You guys,
same for me. I haven't seen any deck be like insanely popular. I pretty much see the old decks and then some insanely weird new decks. So it's really diverse.
I think Gravelock's really popular. Like, if there was any one deck, it would be Gravelocks that was really popular. Anyway,
yeah, it might just be that
funny.
Yeah, so Gravelock decks, they're easy to identify. Like, you see Gravelocks, oh, it's a Gravelock deck.
That's true.
There's different ways to build a Gravelock deck. Like, you can add structures or more spells or something like that.
The deck I've actually come up against the most, and I'm sure I'll have everyone's sympathy, is the new fucking Samada Shift deck.
Ah, yes.
God damn it. That deck. Everyone knows it.
Will you describe the deck for those that haven't had a chance to the pleasure of playing against it yet?
Well, I think you'll all be delighted to hear that it's a control deck, and it runs Samada Shift, and it runs Oblivion Seeker and Kinfolk Veteran and as its only creatures. And then it has all the classic, Frostgale, Quake, and Iron Bile, and Bloodline Taint. And then it has Rat King and Fertile Soil for massive draw potential and Nox Nest. And then it just whittles you down and keeps board clearing you. You know that everyone who's played Scrolls back in the day and also now knows the concept of the deck. It's basically the deck it's basically the reason that Quake was nerfed, that kind of deck. So
a good way to describe the deck. Sorry, no, go ahead. Well, I was going to say, a good way to describe the deck is if you start your eyes pointing at the lower right of your eye sockets and you roll them all the way up to the upper left. That is how I would describe that deck.
Oh god.
Oh man.
I'm kind of happy and also sad that the deck exists. I'm sad because it exists. I'm happy because it proves that no matter how much you want it not to, someone will find some way to make that kind of deck work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We have CISP to blame for this particular version.
Thank you, Sis.
Abilities that haven't been explored. I mean, sure.
Thank you for taking the hate off of me, mess. Thank you.
Sure, the Samana Shift deck is popular now, but I think there are a lot of things that are unexplored, and there's probably something else that's going to creep up. I have a suspicion you're going to see. I've seen people play a deck with Decay Order, and I talked to you guys earlier about it with the Pillar Fatigues and the basically stalling the board, making every unit have infinite cooldowns, and then just nuking all the idols with the lingering spell that doubles the idol damage and faith chains and all that stuff. So I think that deck has potential. I haven't seen anybody play it. Mopic was actually the first person I saw play it in the test server. I haven't seen it at all. I wonder how viable it is. I refuse to play it, but maybe somebody else can and tell me how it works.
Have there been any decks that you expected to see besides that one that you haven't had a chance to see yet? Or maybe that are less popular than you would have guessed?
You know, it's so early in Waypoints, like, you know, what, less than a week now. Every game I play, every ladder I play, every game I play is different deck. So, yeah.
Mid-range growth, I would have expected people to immediately jump on the Tyranno Brute and the Set 6 and the Nox Nest for the increased spam, and just, if you want to, you can make the most insane growth spam deck you want to, like with the Burning Retreat. And I mean, people were touting the fact that deck was going to be completely and utterly broken once you got down to it, and I just haven't seen it.
Well, I actually have seen it quite a lot. Like, it's basically a mid-range growth, but just more spammy, and it uses Ancestral Pact to draw even more cards.
Yeah.
Well, Ancestral Pact's dead now, so you can rejoice in that.
I don't think it's dead.
But it's dead. It's better for sure.
Yeah.
No longer draws you infinite scrolls.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the best part. The best part was watching them having 20 cards, and then they just couldn't come back out to the board until it was too late. Like, I killed all your units, but they drew 20 cards, but they can't. They only have like 8 resources. It's gonna be fine. They can only summon 3 units a turn.
What about some of the other boogeyman decks that folks have been concerned about, like, for example, the Pudding Combo deck? Have you guys run into that a lot?
Not even once.
Personally, haven't, but... Sorry, go ahead. I don't like to interrupt.
Yeah, I've seen it a couple of times, and I didn't actually play it on the test server or play against it, but it's surprising that it's not as bad as I had thought it would be.
I kept saying that, but people never believed me.
Yeah, my main problem with it was the Ancestral Pact. Like, they didn't get going right away, but they just spammed rats, and I had to kill them to stop them from doing anything crazy, and then they threw the entire deck, and they were so to have a combo. But now that Ancestral Pact is nerfed, I think it affects Pudding also, somewhat.
Yeah, that is true. Cantor did play the Pudding combo deck to #1 on the ladder, at least before I think PewQ overtook him late in the evening. But one thing that made his deck so good was the addition of Ancestral Pact. So even if his combo didn't finish the game, you still fill the board with husks and rats and bunnies and things, and just draw enough until you can try it again. So I'm very glad that Ancestral Pact's reign as the best scroll in the game was very brief.
Best change in the recent patch today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, it's that wing spear buff. Come on, man.
You believe in the spiky.
The second best change.
One way of determining whether or not a metagame is healthy or not is to have a sort of a nice variety between not just different deck types, but all the archetypes in the game, like aggro and mid-range and control, and then also all the resources being played, including multi-resource decks. Do you guys see any issues with this right now, or is everything pretty well represented?
Oh, I've seen everything. Some things I don't want to see, but I've seen literally everything.
Agree. I think it's very, very diverse. Like the most diverse I think I've ever seen scrolls, and it makes sense because there are more scrolls in the game than there were before. So
yeah, right
Which
now
is funny
I think
because
you can make aggro decks, mid-range decks, and late-game decks from all the different factions, and they're all viable. And then there are a couple of combo decks too. So I think it's a nice meta, at least on the diversity side.
Yeah, I mean, even Mess, which I had predicted would die with Waypoints for a long time, it's still surviving. I mean, it's
nowhere close to dead.
I mean, people have just been. I guess I predicted the meta would snowball into a more either a very aggro side or a very board clear heavy style. I mean, there are some things that Mess just doesn't work against, and that's like really heavy aggro and late game board clear.
Have you had a chance to try like MES with Overdrive in it yet?
Oh yeah, I've had plenty of chances to try with Overdrive in it. I mean, it's a good scroll Overdrive, but relying on the combo to get off, it can be sort of daunting to get that combo off. I mean, Mess is a deck that's top decks a lot and survives mostly because of the pure consistency within the top decks and the way you manage to pump your resources. And if you draw Overdrive as a dead card, it's gonna bite you so badly.
I suppose it is one of the very few scrolls that could be a dead card in that deck. I really like playing it on the Oculus Cannon.
If you can get it down on leader pump, I mean, your opponent can't go onto the board for 5 turns, but that's only if you get it down. If you build a deck solely around succeeding around one combo, and if you put a scroll in a deck purely for one purpose, then it's purely to combo it with one other scroll, then it's gonna be bad unless you can draw your entire deck. Because
and then you just get purified. Yeah, you just get purified, take bomb, Violent Disperse. Well,
Winged Sorcerer's not nearly as popular as I expected. People were touting that card a lot, haven't seen that a lot.
And there seems to be a lot of targets for the ability, but
I haven't been using it just because it's kind of predictable. Like, you can see it on the board and it's on one countdown, so you don't want to play enchantments. But if you're running Purify, the opponent might be just guessing that maybe he doesn't run it and plays all the enchantments on one unit.
That's a good point. Takes out that Totem Mask deck.
Yeah.
It does. It's surprising how consistently you can draw the Totem Mask with Earthborn Mystics. It's the only enchantment in the deck.
So if you had to predict, and I know it's really, really early and probably too early to make this an accurate prediction, but
you're gonna ask us anyway.
But I'm going to ask anyway for the sake of discussion. A month from now, what would you anticipate would be the 2 or 3 strongest decks out there and most commonly played decks?
Totem Mask Growth.
Totem Mask Growth. Confidence. I like it.
I would say I haven't seen all that much Watch-A-Geddon Decay or the basic mid to late game decay, back. But yeah, it's never going away and it's always strong. And another, let's say, faction would be Growth, because it was pretty good before the patch, and now basically all the Growth deck types are on the better. Aggro got more 1 cooldown units and more enchantments, and late game and mid range are actually possible now. So I think Growth is gonna be strong in the future.
Late game Growth's gotten a huge boost simply because the amount of they can commit less to the board, which alleviates the Quake nerf, and I mean, Fertile Soul's always been one of the best card draws in the game, and it's instant, and you can play it on And
now they have
it's instant, can't be stopped, and it's one of the best. And it gives you so much power when you play it.
And now they have a second fertile soil that they've basically given us with the, what's the anti-lingering scroll that growth has that draws 2 creatures?
Rekindled Spirit. Actually,
Yeah, Rekindled Spirit. That's another phenomenal option. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take the opportunity now to maybe ask us to dive a little deeper into a particular deck that I think, like you guys have said, is probably the most popular thing out there, at least gotten the most buzz, and that is, of course, the Gravelocks. I have seen a couple of really high-level players playing the Gravelocks all the way to the top, and they seem really very strong. What is giving Gravelocks that strength? Is it just having
Elder.
more in the deck, or...?
Elder.
Say that again, sorry?
Elder. And Gravelock Freak, but mostly
yeah.
Elder. Gravelock
Yeah,
Elder, just Elder.
Is it still an Elder-centric deck?
Oh, definitely. If the Elder doesn't come out, then the deck just sputters and dies. But when you get 1 Elder out, it's tolerable. 1 Elder, 2 Elders is really difficult. Once 3 Elders are out, you've basically lost.
Yeah, unless you have Taint.
Your deck, when you have a unit in your deck that increases the health and attack of every other single unit in your deck, it's going to be very powerful. And then, yeah, like what happens if you don't... the games are very... Like when you watch them, if in the mirror match especially, the first person who gets their Elder out, they're going to be in the advantage. It's huge.
Absolutely.
I mean...
Yeah, it's a very...
It's the new Bombard of the rain. It's basically the equivalent of Energy's Bombard. The deck sputters and dies without the Gravelock Elder. That's the best way I can
As in,
describe
it's
it.
just a central scroll of the deck that if the deck can't find it, can't get it out, they're going to have a hard time. But once it's in play, it's...
Yeah,
of course, the
I mean,
Gravelock...
the Gravelock Freak is an amazing support creature, but I mean, it comes out after the Elder mode in most cases. I mean, they establish ball control with the Elder and a bunch of weenies, and then they drop the Gravelock Freak for a massive finishing maneuver, because now you can't kill anything without getting a huge creature just coming in with 4 attack.
Yeah, it's basically a huge green snowball. Like they just come on the board and get stronger and stronger, and eventually you can't deal with them anymore. But it's also quite easy to get bad draws and just lose without doing anything. If you don't get the Elders, you don't get the Freaks, only drawing the 2 and 3 HP Gravelocks.
It's another card that has a creep problem, just like Bombard had. Like Bombard, when Scrolls was first released, was not a big deal because there weren't very many ranged units, but now all of a sudden you can make a deck with all ranged units. Gravelock Elder, now you can have a deck with entirely Gravelocks. Restless Undead, you can now have a deck almost with entirely undead. Like cards like that, which used to not be a big deal, are now super powerful because there are all these more cards, and there'll be more cards like that too.
They're going to continue to print more cards, and we're going to see more undead and more Gravelocks, and so
that's the beauty of a digital card game. You can that's the beauty of a digital card game. You can rebalance as needed.
Yeah. And then, of course, there is the Snargle Omelet, which I don't think people were believers in until just a few days ago. At least some people were believers, but a lot of people were overlooking how powerful this scroll is. I see players...
Free card advantage.
It's free card advantage. You sacrifice for energy almost every turn, and then get your egg out and draw three or four Gravelocks every turn and play them right out.
I can't describe much better myself.
I haven't actually seen it really snowball out of control even once.
Okay,
it might
that's
just be bad luck, or I might have just rushed them too early.
I have to agree with that. I haven't seen a game where that has been the case. I mean, I've seen the egg been used or the omelet been used, and it's been good. But I haven't seen, you got to remember also, if you do that early game, you're top decking every turn, you don't have your machinateds and your furies and whatever else, your tools that you need. So you're sacrificing all this versatility for ramping up high, and that's not always the best thing.
Yeah.
It does interact really well with the Skull Shrine that gives you 2 energy every turn, the lingering spell. And this is anecdotal, but I watched a game with NRP and PewQ a few nights ago, and they were both playing Gravelocks, and it was just an absolute omelet war. They were both on 11 or 12 energy and just constantly playing out 3 or 4 Gravelocks every turn. It was interesting to watch, but With the nerf, I'm wondering if that's going to continue or at least be a little easier to disrupt.
Well, I mean, health is the most significant way you can nerf a unit. You're at 3 health now. What does that mean? Burn.
Burn.
Yeah.
So
Spark Frost Gale, I don't know.
on health from a unit, it opens up a whole can of worms of what you can do to it.
Harvester, 3 to 4 is basically the magic number. I mean, that's why Surrender Brute is still strong. I mean, it's a 4/4. If Surrender Brute was, I would think it would be a nerf if Surrender Brute was a 2 cost 3/5/3, because simply right now it can just knock down those heavy blockers early on. Those nasty 4-health blockers that Growth always struggles with.
Yeah. Have you guys seen Terrain Brute be played quite a bit?
Actually, no. That's funny.
Is that just because there's no home for him, or?
It might just be that the new scrolls mostly support the spam playstyle, like you have Ancestral Pact and Skyphone is playable now and stuff like that. And it doesn't, well, it might fit into it, but then again, it might not be perfect.
And then last question about Gravelocks before we move on. What advice do you have for players that are struggling to beat the Gravelock deck? I've seen some complaints out there. Would you have any tips for them?
Run Gravelocks.
Run Gravelocks.
No, I mean, if you want to, you can always throw caution to the wind, embrace the hate, and run some Shift. That deal's pretty well worth it.
Does it?
There's some Shift deck because Bloodline Taint hits the entire force. And you just quake, and that's 4 damage, and the Frost Scale, that's another 3 damage, and then the board's gone. And it takes like 4 or 5 turns for that steam to pick up again, and then you basically can do whatever you want in that period of time.
The answer before about what I think will be the most powerful decks in the future, and it is too early to predict, and it's just a prediction, but I want to say that mass removal decks like that have a huge potential, and sure, it's Samada Shift right now, but Samada Shift is not the crux of that deck. The crux of that deck is removing everything on the opponent's field and ramping up uncontrollably, or at least much higher than your opponent can ever keep up with, and at that point you can do whatever you want. I mean, yeah, Samada Shift helps, but if you remove the opponent's board and ramp up, you can make a deck out of whatever you have, because you'll have so many resources, you can do whatever you want. Rat King Necro, sure. But removal decks like that, not necessarily the Samada Shift deck right now, but I think those will be very, very strong without a couple card adjustments. When I say very, very strong, but I mean like globally strong, like strong against every matchup. And those are the decks that tend to gravitate towards the top of the ladder, are the decks that have strong matchups in every, versus every matchup.
That's true.
I'm gonna take a wild guess and say maybe Tempo Order with pushback could work. You push back the Elder, you pull off a few combos, and you smash through the entire line of defense. Because the strength of the Gravelock deck is just being able to keep on protecting those Elders, standing in the back, buffing up everything.
And if we take it further, like usually, so when a deck is that strong and that powerful, let's say Samana Shift is at the top, then people make decks that counter it. And what counters that deck very well? Well, Effigies of the Queen and Order, and you could Tempo Order with Effigy of the Queen, or any Order with Effigy of the Queen. The card that gives magic armor to everything, the Galarian card that you normally wouldn't ever play, but if decks like that are super powerful, you'd see, once again, I'm horrible with scrolls names, but the +1 attack, +1 magic armor, Lingering, anybody?
Pulling it up.
Yeah. I mean, the card situation has gotten to the point and designed like, if you can counter any meta if you want to. That's basically how it is now. You have new scrolls, there is no deck that you won't be able to beat. That's
Grounds of the Fallen is the name of that.
Grounds of the Fallen. Thank you.
Yes.
Yep. So I mean, you would see
ominous name.
That deck or a deck with those cards start to be very popular. So I don't know. I think it's impossible to predict what's going to happen, but like I can definitely foresee something like that happening.
Okay. That does bring up a good question. Tempo Order obviously was the most popular deck in the last, I guess you would call it Season of Scrolls, combined, of course, with Aggro Enchantment Growth. Are either of those decks being played right now?
Enchantment growth is... No, I haven't seen it with the new Waypoint scrolls. I mean, there's always the old enchantment growth, but I haven't seen it a lot, no.
No, I haven't seen it either. But I did try it today, and it seems pretty strong still, because you have more 1 HP, no, not 1 HP, but 1 countdown units.
Mm-hmm.
The guy, I don't remember his name.
The 3-cost one, I'll
oh,
pull him up.
Yeah.
I mean, Earth and Mirth could
Yeah,
be
and that
pretty
too.
insane in an enchantment deck.
Earth and Mirth is...
Earthborn Keeper.
Earth and Mirth
Earth
is...
and Mirth.
It's fairly balanced with the cost, but it's so threatening, because you know at any point the opponent might get like 5-6 attack out of nowhere.
Yeah.
From them.
It's the growth version of Machinated.
Yeah, exactly.
For
Just
2 extra
double the cost.
Well, it doesn't increase countdown, and on a 1
That's
countdown
true.
unit, you're gonna get a lot more value.
And it shows how powerful Machinated is.
You want that scroll nerfed, I can tell.
I don't think the Machinated needs a nerf. I think it's way above the power curve, but that doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be nerfed, but there are plenty of people calling for that.
It might
Be
be reasonable
unhappy
now that
with a change to that card.
Well, it would make Gravelocks a lot weaker
Yeah.
without the ability of that bloody one attack
Gravelock
to
Raider.
help Gravelock
Yeah.
just knocking down your entire row in the early game.
He's really good.
Name an energy deck that's not a mono energy structure that doesn't use Machinated, right? I mean, it's
If you're
so
using
good.
creatures and energy, you use
You
Machinated.
have
mostly
Machinated.
energy.
Yeah.
They're mostly energy structures deck.
I mean,
You know the one that splashes purification? That's not mono energy structures.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Though MES could stand for mostly energy structures too, so we'll have to clarify.
that'd be
All right.
small MES or something.
Yeah, that's true. All right, I'm going to transition here, and we're going to try to hit on some of the scrolls that we're most interested in talking about that we haven't had a chance to yet, to make sure they get a little bit of coverage. So I think I'm just going to go sort of around the table and let you each pick one that you are interested in, and we'll just have a little conversation about it. Is anybody brave enough to go first?
Oh.
Zarc, I see your hand raised.
Oh, dang it. I'm raising my hand.
I can't see your hand because, well, I can't get that .jpeg
All right.
to move.
Well, as long as he doesn't pick mine. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. Zarc.
Well, do you want to take a guess at what my skull is? It's Totem Mask. Come on.
Snargle Brain.
Yeah, Snargle Brain is like the best. No, Totem Mask. I like Totem Mask a lot. I don't know why no one else likes it. It is literally my favorite scroll in the entire set.
I still don't buy it. I still don't believe it. You're gonna have to make a good pitch, other than
Well, you see, the thing about Totem Mask is you don't have a lot of expensive enchantments in the game, mostly because you're basically putting your eggs all in one basket. Totem Mask is this like really late game enchantment, and that's gotten people put off of it, I feel, because they're used to their enchantments being easily comboed along with their other creatures, you know, Stag Heart, Champion Ring, the 2 costs, and the 2 cost scrolls, and then you have Totem Mask, which is 5 costs, which is really clunky in an aggro deck. But in a late game growth where you go to like 8 or 9 resources, you can easily drop Totem Mask on a unit along with a Kinfolk Brave and a Nox Nest. And then suddenly you've got a 2/2 buff that can then stack into infinity. And if your opponent can't deal with that Totem Mask, you're just gonna be able to snowball that thing higher and higher. And if you get like 2 or 3 structures out, I mean, you're not losing any tempo by buffing it up further. So if you just keep on throwing down structures that can then serve as blockers to protect your now even stronger unit that then most likely attacks each turn, or maybe it has Relentless because it's a Great Wolf, you can really make something snowball out of control. It's not strong enough that you can build a whole entire deck around it, but if you can get it rolling, it can win you games.
Well, fair enough. I'll have to see it in action to fully believe it. It just makes me so nervous, like, to play a 5-cost spell or enchantment that doesn't do
definitely.
anything on its own.
Yeah, the thing about it, you want to combo it with the structure, right? With the 2 core. You want to be at 7 resources, play Totem Mask plus Noxness, and then kill something with the extra 2 attack to then combo further in. And then, or maybe if you got a clear board, you just throw it down and then you make your opponent expend removal on a fucking 2-cost Brave.
Yeah.
And your Wetland Ranger and your Great Wolf survives instead. I mean, when people... You can also use it as a bait, right? The Totem Mask comes down, so people are going to be like, oh shit, I'm going to have to remove that. And if it gets out of control, then there's 1 scroll in the game that can remove it. 2 scrolls in the game that can remove it total.
Well, pushback, purification, and Damon Curse is it.
Oh, pushback. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
That's it. So if you play that against energy or against growth, they're just going to be clueless if you get it high enough.
That's true. So, Decay has that goofy scroll that nobody plays that kills enchantments, but your point stands that the vast majority of decks aren't going to have an answer if it snowballs. Lahopaa, Atmaz, either of you want to jump in and give your 2 cents on Totem Mask?
I have never seen it played, so I can't say anything.
I have to say I haven't seen it very much. I have played against Zarc on the test server against it and got my butt kicked, but it was... I don't know how consistent it is. I have an open mind about it, and I will definitely watch for it. Personally, I don't know. It's hard for me to say because I haven't used it.
Zarc, we're a bunch of non-believers or agnostics here, so next time there's a big Scrolls tournament, please take your Totem deck in and just dominate. This is your opportunity to shape the ladder for the next 6 months.
If you hold a tournament in Japan time, I'll do it, but it's 2 a.m.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, I should note that it is 2 a.m. for Zarc right now, so forgive anything that he says that sounds goofy. He's very sleep deprived to be on with us. All right, Atmaz, you had a scroll that you were excited to raise your hand and tell us about. What you got?
There's a lot that I like, but if I have to pick one, easily the one that makes for the most fun turns and the most interesting turns is Reloris, the Lord Knight, the unique order unit who has resonance with +1 attack. The turns you can make with that guy are like, wow, like that was really awesome. And so satisfying to use. Like, oh, so much like you have a bunch of units off cooldown. You don't even have a Reloris on the field, but you have 6 mana. You drop a Reloris and focus and haste or whatever, you've got a gigantic wave of damage coming. And I love that card so much. And he's really one of the reasons why I'm mostly running Order right now, him and Effigy the Queen. Effigy the Queen is the close second. Not as... I can't describe Effigy as in as much fun terms, like as much flowery terms. Like Effigy is just... I just love that card. But I think in terms of fun and just all-around awesomeness, even just watch, even if it happens to me, if Reloris is kicking my butt, I'm like, you know what? I like Reloris. That's a good card. So yeah, that's an easy pick for me.
Have you seen Reloris played in mostly early game builds, or is it more of like a traditional late game order with a night theme that you've seen?
I've seen both. I've been running a tempo order lately, a couple games with Reloris in it, and it works just fine. But also late game, he's there. I think he belongs in every deck, whether there's other knights or not. It doesn't matter. He's such a good versatile card.
I guess that's true. I'm looking at him now. I was thinking he only buffed knights, but he buffs everybody equally.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be a knight deck at all.
If there's a skirmish out, you just want to kill it as fast as possible, because either there's going to be a focus, or there's going to be a Reloris, or it's just scary legendary. Not legendary, goddammit. Stop. Unique. Champion. Whatever.
Is it the most important order scroll right now?
Oh.
Maybe that's too strong, but he is a very good order scroll right now, and it's never bad to have him in your deck, I would say.
He's kind of a support creature. Like, he doesn't do anything on his own, but if you have just a couple of skirmishes, he's amazing.
Oh my god, there's a Reloris on the field. What do I do? It's this order player has a strong board. Oh my god, he just played a Reloris. It's panic time. You know, it's that kind of thing.
And he has 4 health, which is the key number.
Yeah, if you wanted to nerf Reloris,
if he was 3, he'd be unplayable.
The way to do it would, if you left him into the ground, it would be by giving him -1 health.
Yeah.
So do it.
It was to say, yeah, every scroll in the game, you take away from health from it. That's the biggest thing you can do.
Mojang, you know what to do.
Are you calling for a nerf right now?
Let's start with the Witch Doctor. Then don't worry about Reloris. He's fine. Go and deal with the Witch Doctor first.
Growth, I have no objections to the nerfing of the Witch Doctor. How about units spawn as undead at turn's end? That would be great.
At turn's end? That'd be interesting. So it wouldn't be able to tank an entire row of...
That would be a nerf, but it would also be, I think, a little confusing for the player. Like the first time you see that happening, like it doesn't make sense. It kind of makes sense the way it works right now.
We can also nerf it to be a 1/1. I would be okay with that.
I don't know if a 1/1 is playable. I'd love to see him a little lower health. That's all I'll say.
I'd like him to be able. I'd like to be able to kill him in 2 quakes. That's all.
Yep, 4 health is significant.
All right, Lahopaa, your turn next. Pick a scroll, any scroll.
Well, we've pretty much gone through the decks I've been playing, and I would have liked to talk about Reloras, because I love that guy too. But I guess I could talk about some old scrolls that were changed, and I think they had a big effect.
Sure.
The Gallant Defender is pretty amazing now. It works even in tempo decks. I've seen it both in tempo decks and late game decks. It's so much easier to get the armor right now. And then it's 6 health or even more if there's multiple units attacking.
Yeah, so its wing shield was so good, but Gallant Defender's got an extra health on that, and that's pretty critical.
Yeah, it's almost twice as good sometimes. And you only need to have equal amounts of units. And the same with Righteous Partisan. I've seen even this one in tempo decks, because it's so easy to draw with it. Just
Partisan's so great.
Yeah.
Righteous Partisan is so good.
Yeah, you can just start your turn with dropping the Partisan and see what you throw. Then you can sacrifice and play some Pathers, and you get insane draws from those.
Order is becoming the cantrip faction. The king of cantrips.
Those 2 cards are really amazing now. And then there's one interesting thing I noticed. I saw someone playing Unleashing the Power as probably the only enchantment in a mid-range growth deck.
Yeah, that's Dialex, I think, plays that.
Yeah, I think it was him. And it's 3 cost now. And I would almost say it's a better champion ring. Because...
better Earth than Earth.
Well, 2 attack is like the minimum you usually get if you use it on a Ragged Wolf or something. But then you can just play it on the opponent creature, and suddenly that Witch Doctor is 2 health, and you can quake it.
I might actually play that.
And the cost reduction helps with the quake combo quite a lot.
That's true. Yeah, the Quake combo is really interesting. I watched Dialex play a lot, and he will unleash inner power their best unit and Quake the board, and there goes their high health guy.
I was impressed with that a lot.
All right, before I go to my list of scrolls that I'd like to hit, any other contenders for scrolls to chat about?
No ID?
No ID? Yeah.
That's a pretty significant one. I haven't seen it a lot, but some of the stuff you can pull off with him is pretty insane.
Yeah, Replenish to make a free unit is already good.
Yeah, well, 3 unit, and it has 2 attack, which is very good with it. Which is very good if you combo it with God Hand. It's just it's a good scroll. It's actually a really good scroll.
And it's of course key in the Pudding combo deck.
Oh,
from Necrogeddon shenanigans.
The Necrogeddon shenanigans, oh god. That deck can go down at 5 times. And then other time it just falls. That deck falls flat on its face sometimes.
Yeah, so speaking about that deck, Rat King is a card that is now has so much more versatility. You see it in every deck that has growth, and I really like the card. I really like it when it's played in traditional I don't like the word traditional, but in like a mid-range growth or a creature-based growth, you play a Rat King. It's a good card. It's well designed. You've got three little walls that appear, and you can buff their attack with all kinds of different methods. And it's a really interesting, great card. But when it exists in a world where you can place a Rat King and end up with infinite mana by just spamming beasts over and over. And that's just one example in this particular deck, in Miracle Pudding, we'll call it. That seems to be the popular name.
We are so bad at naming decks in this society, in this community.
When I heard that one, it took me days to figure out what is Miracle Pudding, and like, oh, Budding Vader Pudding? Okay, anyway. When Rat King exists in a world where cards like that exist, it makes for a lot of things that are, I think, frustrating to play against. I border on the line of saying that it's unfun. But once again, it's too early to say things like that. But what I'm getting at is that Rat King is very strong right now because of Wild, because of all these additional cards, Budding Vader, and specifically with Wild, the ability to Necro your Rat King so much more easily. This deck has been around for a while. Decay growth removal with Rat King Necro has always been around, but with the change to Wild, it's so much more viable, and there are even better cards you can put in. And Samada Shift ignores Rat King since it's a spell. So the Samana Shift deck runs, Veteran and Oblivion Seeker. So
yes,
you can have free creatures in their deck without really having a creature card. I just want to point out how strong that card is, how much more stronger that card is now after Waypoints, and it was already super strong.
Already one of the best in the game, and now it's a key component to several decks that folks don't like.
And I try and think, like, how would I change it? How would I nerf it? And everything that I think of is it's difficult because I like it in a traditional growth creature based deck. Like, I think, wow, it's a good card. I like how it works. It's just the way it's abused in other decks. It's difficult to make a change to it in my mind that would be good all around. So I'm once again, like, it's so early at Waypoints. I don't really have strong opinions on things, but that card to me stands out like a red flag, like it throws up a bunch of flags when I see stuff like that.
Like what, Zarc?
A sore thumb.
Yeah, like a sore thumb, yeah. Yeah, and like my first thought on what to change with it would be, well, what if it was 3 cost, 2 rats? But then I think it just goes from fun and useful to, I don't even know if it gets played in that version.
Yeah, I mean, when you change it, you want to keep it playable, right? And that's so difficult. Yeah, but that's why I'm not paid to solve those problems. I'll push that off to Mojang to figure that out. Luckily, we have the leisure of sitting back until we see somebody mention a great idea and be like, oh, that's it, Mojang, do this. But,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
armchair developing is the way to go. The last scroll that I'd like to make sure we hit on is actually Halls of Lhasa. I think that I haven't really seen a lot of this yet. I anticipate that this is it can be insane. And I think if a mono decay control deck ends up being popular, it's going to be because of this card and Witch Doctor. Have you guys seen this one in action at all?
Oh, yeah, definitely. If it comes out and you don't have fancy lingering, then they're going to outpace you in like 2 or 3 turns because they will basically keep on drawing things. On the test server, I ran into this really nasty deck with Oblivion Seekers and Aslan Spires and Halls of Lhasa, and just redrawing the Oblivion Seekers over and over and over again with the Halls of Lhasa, and it was like the worst thing ever. I think he ended up with 22 cards.
And you can get to a point where you're actually like looping halls, so like you'll sift for the one that you just got rid of and then bring out another one.
Yeah. It's a really fun scroll, and its effect definitely justifies the cost. I don't think it's overpowered though, but it is basically the ultimate. It is the decay version of Imperial Resources.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Anyone else seen it in action?
Not played against it, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have tried it. Might have played 2 games with basically the old What's Again on deck. that had halls and the anti-lingering spell, and it's kind of the same problem that Necrogeddon has, that you don't want to have it early, and you have to set up some kind of board before you can really play it, but the value is just insane. You can draw so many cards of it. And isn't it the only card that only draws from your discard pile?
Yes.
That's an interesting mechanic.
It's very Decay-esque.
Yeah. I'm interested to see if we see more of that kind of mechanic later in the game.
Yeah, it seems like a natural way for them to go with Decay.
Yeah, there's so many new tactics that you could make with spells like that. Like for growth example, you could play veterans and the ragged wolves again and again if you could do something like that.
That's true.
Again, the Oblivion Seeker deck, it was really nasty to play against.
Oblivion Seeker is just... If there's a problem scroll out there, it might be Oblivion Seeker. It shows up in all of these degenerate decks. Draw a scroll is just... Draw 2 scrolls on top of that is just nuts.
Yeah, I mean...
I like that you call them degenerate decks.
Yeah. I shouldn't say that. That's probably a little strong, but... basically anything that is doing something besides playing scrolls and attacking with them wants to run Oblivion Seeker.
I do. I mean, I agree with you. I don't. Degenerate is a strong word, I know, but I know what you're saying. Decks that basically, like, this is why I love scrolls, because I love all card games, collectible card games. But the reason why scroll stands out so much is because of the hex board, and there's that extra layer of strategy. Like, okay, the way you construct your deck is super important. The way you sacrifice is super important, and which the order you play your cards is super important. But now add an additional layer on top of that, where you have to position your units in the perfect way every turn, and there are 15 hexes possible to move them onto, and your opponent is doing the same thing. That is where Scrolls is amazing, when there's that dance of units flying around the board, attacking each other. And decks that get around that, I'm not going to, the word degenerate, like I said, too strong, but decks that get around that, just, they make me a little disappointed, and Scrolls has so much potential, so much more potential than decks like that. But at the same time, if those don't exist, then what's the alternative? Does everyone go aggro? And there's a whole argument to be made. But I understand what you're saying when you use that word. And to go back to...
It's the argument against blue in Magic the Gathering. Why exist?
Yeah, but...
And to go back to... Sorry, I don't want to change the subject again, but to go back to the Halls of Uam last, we're talking about the graveyard. Yeah, I'm surprised that there haven't been a lot more cards that draw from the graveyard for Decay. I mean, that makes perfect sense. And I think you'll probably see a lot more like that, where it's cards that specifically, like, pull a husk from your graveyard, or something like that.
Yeah.
You could do that in Growth as well. Makes sense. Growth's big on the whole recycling thing.
Yeah.
Well,
okay, sure. My goal for this show is not to talk about Magic the Gathering too much, because I tend to do that in my podcast. But in MTG, both black and green are playing with the Gravelock, or in the graveyard. And
valid. It's a valid thing to bring up, because it's the gold standard. Generally, a lot of people consider it to be the gold standard of card games. The first hugely popular one. So a lot of people recognize, you make a comparison to it, like, oh yeah, I see what you're talking about. But obviously, Scrolls and MTG are so different. But yes.
Yeah, and the theme of Decay is clearly mapped onto the theme of Black and MTG, so we all want graveyard mechanics. They're so much fun. So I'm excited to see Halls step into that territory.
Mm-hmm.
All right, last thoughts on Halls before... I'm just going to actually go ahead and ask... so lingering versus anti-lingering spells. There was some concern. I was one of these folks that was concerned that lingering was going to be a little bit too powerful, and folks were going to have to run their token anti-lingering spell of their faction in their deck. But I think that I've been sort of proven wrong on that, especially with the initial nerf to lingering. Do you guys play anti-lingering spells in your decks, or do you prefer to just let the lingering spells linger?
I let the lingering spells linger. And that was a huge problem against the Ancestral Pact, but everything else was tolerable.
A great, like, I originally thought that everyone would have to run anti-lingering, and I thought that I was like, oh, I don't know about this lingering stuff. Everyone's just going to include the anti-lingerings in every single deck, but that's not the case. You don't really need them, except, of course, first Ancestral Pact, which is now adjusted. So I think that you can get away with not doing it. But if you do put it in, then you have that extra edge. I kind of like where that's at, where that ended up at least for now.
Lahopaa, do you get a chance to?
Yeah, I had the same fear that lingering would be too powerful, and Ancestral Pact really was a bit too powerful, but it's usually okay to just let the lingering spells alone and try to play around them. But some of the anti-lingering spells, like the energy one, the what's it called, Stone Enigma, like it's not a bad play to just play it alone, like not even taking out a lingering spell.
That's true. It increases energy on its own, and frankly, that's good for 4 cost.
It's not a great play either, so you won't always play it, but it's not a bad play. So I think that kind of cards are nice, and the growth one is pretty much the same. And the decay one too, it's okay. The only one I don't like is the Order Banner of what it's called?
Banner of Ordnance?
Yeah, that one. It's just, you don't want to like play too many bad structures on your deck, and the effect seems a little weak. Like it doesn't work alone. You have to use other spells to make it work.
Yeah, it was.
Carefully
it was actually
read.
kind of. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Just carefully read the names of the banners, because when you're playing Judgment and you pick the wrong banner and you still don't read it and then you play it, it's a bad time. Not to say that I've ever done that, but just watch out for that.
Well, I might
Royal banner
at some point done that.
I'm not saying that the banner would be like bad as anti-lingering. It can be strong, but it's not useful for anything else really. That's the only thing it does.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I would like to have like a couple more anti-lingering mechanics for each faction, because it's only the one card for every faction now. Like maybe we could have creatures that would count down, not entirely remove, but count down the lingering spells, or something like that.
So good point being made in chat. If you want to counter Gravelocks, you play Royal Banner.
I suppose that would work, yeah. If you can keep it alive,
So,
they'll probably just burn it. But
Yep, but it is, it's there, it's an option. But then you run that card, and then you play against Order, and it's a dead card, and there's all that you go into.
Well, if Gravelocks take over the meta,
there you go. Yeah, there's always these silver bullets that you can slip in and run 2 of them and sacrifice them when you don't need them. It's another thing that I love about Scrolls, is having that ability.
Completely.
But we've got one more topic. We don't have much time, so we'll just sort of touch on this. We had this new balance patch this morning, and we've hit on, or this morning for me, it was late in the evening for you, Zarc. And we've talked about a number of the changes that were done. We talked about Ancestral Pact. We talked about Snargle Omelet. We talked a bit about Gravelock Freak and Wing Spear. But I do want to chat a little bit about the poison change that came in with Waypoints, and of course how that affects Brain Lice going up to cost 4. Do you guys feel positively or negatively about this poison change now that it lasts forever?
I'm indifferent to it. It surprised me. I don't know why it was changed to last indefinitely. I think it was to make it simpler. But then that doesn't make sense either, because Ranger's Bane, I don't know. I don't know why they did that, but I think that if they do that, it does need to cost 4, and I like the latest patch.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Blinky loves the new the nerf to Brain Lice. I think he's been touting that nerf for a long time. I think he appreciates the nerf, and that he has nothing against it at all.
It was already really
strong
to
tempt him?
At 3. He's baiting.
Yeah, it was good at 3.
But even at 3 turns, at 3 costs and 3 turns, it was already really good. And then they made it infinite. I'm like, what? Like my mind blew up.
Yeah, it definitely needed a change with the poison change, but it is really similar to Infectious Blight right now, being a 4-cost poison with some sort of advantage on top of it. But maybe they're different enough that that's okay. I don't know.
Maybe.
I do think Ranger's Bane is sneaky good now, being only 2 cost to poison forever. You can take out any unit with that if you're patient enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if that card needs changed too now. I don't know. I know Brainlight's definitely was very strong.
Yeah.
2 cost poison, you don't draw a card though, so I mean it's a big difference.
Yeah.
I will say that every change in the patch today was great. I think everyone was warranted and they're all steps in the right direction, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with it overall. What do you guys think?
I'm pretty done. I really think the buff to Wing's Spear is just the right thing to make it a competitive scroll again. I mean, do you all agree? Do you all agree?
There's just so many 3-drops
Health,
in
man.
order. I don't know that you would ever pick Wing Spear over them. Might be more
Maybe
interesting
if
in
you-
Judgment at least.
If you made it 2-drop, someone might play it, but
I could see
still
it as a
not the
good,
best.
a playable 2-drop. I mean, you look at other 2-drops with 2 health. Now I'm gonna have to name scrolls, but the Smuggler,
Winged Soldier. Hired Smuggler.
Wing Soldier. Yeah, I mean, I think it's on par with a lot of those.
I could see it go down to 2 and maybe have its original Spiky 3 or Dominion Spiky 3. All right, well, I think we're going to go ahead and take the opportunity to wrap things up there. Big thanks to our guests, Atmaz, Lahopaa, and Zarc, for stepping onto the show. I kind of came to them last minute, and they were all very, very excited to join me, so I appreciate them doing that. And then big thanks, of course, to our Twitch community that has been having a wonderful conversation going on in the background. I try to keep up with it as I go through the show, but I can't always do that. But thanks to you all for watching, and thanks to those of you that watch after the fact on the Badger Guild YouTube channel and on iTunes. We value our delayed listeners there as well, so thank you to all of you. And yeah, that's basically what we have. Everyone go out there and go play some scrolls. Thank you for watching.
And thank
Golden
you
Master's
for
awesome.
having me. It was a lot of fun.
Happy to.